Good evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another edition of Talking Point. My name is Faraz Patel. We're coming to you from our studios in Johannesburg, live on Hilaal TV, channel 347. I'll be in your company for the next 45 to 50 minutes. We are a few weeks away from the really mouth-watering, some would call it, but also much anticipated ANC elective conference that will be happening in Nasrec. And of course, the contenders or the nominees for each of the top 6 positions have been released, and we are going to be going through each of them. But most importantly, how the nominees had come about and how will it be dealt with during the 3 to 4 day elective conference, which will be happening in the south of Johannesburg. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome somebody who's part of the Electoral Committee, the Secretary of the ANC Electoral Committee, Chief Matsila. Chief, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for welcoming me here.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Chief, so let's get to obviously the breakdown of how the nominees had come about. We're going to be discussing them obviously in earnest during the show. So we have different branches that are of course across the country of the African National Congress. How did these nominees come about for them to be selected? A number of names have been left out. And a number of names have been included. A lot of surprises also. So just maybe give us a breakdown on how this was able to occur.
I think the first issue to emphasize is that a national conference, being the highest decision-making body in the African National Congress, is a conference of branches. So 90% of the delegates who participate in that conference will be branch delegates. Now, this means that the ANC had to embark on what we call branch general meetings, where they nominate delegates to represent them at conference. They also nominate those they prefer to lead in certain positions, especially the top 6 that we're talking about today. So the candidates that we have are a product of branch nominations. What we then do as the Electoral Committee is that we consolidate the branch nominations per province. And then in terms of the ANC constitution, for anybody to qualify and be presented at the conference through a ballot, you ought to be a nominee for a province. To be a nominee for a province, it means that you should receive the highest number of nominations from the certain province. Then we consolidate that into a national list and then rank those who are nominated by province in terms of now overall numbers of branches nationally that will have nominated them. Then that gives you the top nominees per each position. And in terms of our rules, we were looking at top 3 for each position, but in some cases only 2 candidates have been nominated by provinces for a president of for a position of the president and the one of the deputy secretary general. So what is important also to stress is that at the level of the branch general meetings, those branches must be in good standing. What we mean by that is that those branch gatherings must be attended by members of the ANC who are in good standing, which means their membership is fully paid up and they've got no disciplinary issues affecting them. Then they become members in good standing. Then the branches also must be in good standing, which means they are attended by those who are in good standing. And the most important thing is that when a branch nominates somebody for a particular position, that particular candidate should receive at least 50% plus 1 of those who are in that meeting who are also verified and allowed to participate in the meeting. So that's what that whole process culminates in what we announced on Tuesday.
In every build-up to an elective conference, of course, you have provincial and within the metros having the elections. How important is that in leading up to all of this? Because one would assume that without that, you don't have the sort of like icing on the cake for the elective conference to happen.
Yeah, it's very important that you have your provincial structures, the provincial executive committees also elected, before you go to a national conference, because you then have a leadership of a province that then will marshal the delegates into the conference. But we do have a few cases where some provinces have not gone to conference. They might go before the national conference. That's your Western Cape and Free State.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask about how close is that to happening, because it's necessary. I mean, given that we've got 3 to 4 weeks well, actually 3 weeks left before the elective conference does start.
Yes, there's much effort that is being put to ensure that those two provinces eventually go to conference, but the branches which are in good standing in those provinces are allowed to engage in the BGMs, the branch general meetings, in preparation for conference. So you'll find that those that are nominated, some have been nominated by Free State and also by Western Cape through the branches that are in good standing. So even if there is no provincial executive committee, the branches in good standing in terms of our constitution are permitted to proceed to conference.
You'll always have challenges, and I'm assuming that is part and parcel of every elective conference of every party, be it, ANC, EFF, DA. There's always going to be contestations or some sort of challenges. So, as an electoral committee, how do you deal with those challenges? And I'm talking from a provincial point of view, because there's so many times that we've been seeing throughout the year that there's been challenges here and there. So, through the electoral committee, how do you make sure that you can, first of all, resolve the challenges, and then secondly, have the provincial conferences happening to make sure that the lead up to the national conference is a smooth transition?
Yes, so we have in place some rules of how the electoral process should be run. And those rules are approved by the National Executive Committee and they apply across the board. We also have structures that deal with disputes. For instance, you've got at the national level, the National Dispute Resolution Committee. At the provincial level, you've got the Provincial Dispute Resolution Committee, and also at a regional level, you have same structure. So when problems occur at the level of the branch general meetings, those are the structures that deal with those disputes and process them, with us playing oversight in terms of the rules. And then if branch general meetings must be rerun or convened again, those structures will rule like that, and then people will go back to the branch general meetings until they can successfully nominate. Then you also have, now that we've got, for instance, the candidates for the top 6 positions, there could be disputes there or objections that we could entertain. And those are dealt with by the Electoral Committee itself, which then has a final say in terms of the decision it makes.
After the break, we're going to be focusing on what happens during that elective conference, the vote counting, any contestation, any challenges that may arise. So do stay tuned to Talking Point. After the break, I'll continue my conversation with Chief Matsila. Welcome back to Talking Point. We're just under 3 weeks to go before the start of the ANC elective conference, in what many are viewing this as a massive one for the current ruling party, and of course going forward to the 2024 national elections. But we're not there yet. We're focusing, of course, on what's going to be happening in Nasrec in the middle of December. Chief Matsila, let's talk about at the conference itself. And I know the challenges that the Electoral Committee is going to be having, because there'll be a number of members saying, well, a rerun of counts or recount of votes. So when you're sitting, of course, in a room or a hallway where you're not influenced by any of the members for each of the positions, talk to us about how the vote counting happens, especially from many of the branch members, the ward members, and the ANC members who have been there for a very long time.
No, when we get to conference at Nasrec in December, there will also be another opportunity for conference delegates arranged in terms of provinces to can also nominate some candidates from the floor. The requirement is that whoever is nominated from the floor by delegates must receive 25% of nominations by the delegates that are in the conference. That's a significant issue. And then thereafter, we then go into voting sessions that are arranged into 3 sessions. The first session is when the delegates will vote for the positions of the president, the national chairperson, the treasurer general, and the secretary general 4. Then the second voting session is for the deputy president and the deputy secretary general. And then the third one is for the additional 80 members of the NEC. And the arrangement is such that after each voting session, the delegates will be given a moment to reflect in terms of the demographics of those that are elected in the first session, the gender, and any other consideration they may have to ensure that we have a proper balanced mix of leadership in those positions. So that's how it would work. Then of course, then we've got an electoral agency that is appointed. It's called elections, that then runs the voting.
The independent.
Yes, they're independent. So they run the voting sessions and the counting. So after each voting session, we'll then count the results for that and announce as to who is now the president and the other positions.
What I noticed about 2017 is that there were two, obviously. One was a challenge. The other one, of course, took quite some time. Northwest, from there was, of course, challenges with regards to some of its members not being, the membership was not paid, or there was questions about the integrity. If you have provinces who, of course, have these challenges or present these challenges as an electoral committee, how do you deal with it, knowing that this could delay the conference even further in terms of getting that final result?
Look, now we sit with almost 90% of the branches that qualify having gone through the nomination process successfully. And that surpasses our 70% threshold, which is specified in the Constitution. So from that perspective, most branches that would qualify to go to the conference have now qualified. And the disputes have now all been resolved. So we don't envisage the same problem that occurred, where you have the status of some delegates not really confirmed, and their inclusion in the calculations and the voting process would cause problems. So this time around, we are much more streamlined and much more clear as to who is going to go there, and everybody who goes there will go there with a an audited record that you have passed the test and you are clean to go and vote.
And then we saw this in the final day, the vote counting between President Cyril Ramaphosa and Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. It was quite tight. I mean, it wasn't a large margin. So, again, that presents a challenge for the committee, doesn't it, also? At the same time?
Yes, you can't preempt the results, and you can't say you want a big margin or a small margin. It's the will of the branches that is expressed. If they express a tight margin, that's okay, as long as we have results that are not questionable, that are acceptable. But whoever has got most numbers becomes a legitimate leader of the African National Congress.
I want to talk about when you arrive at conference. So we have, of course, all of these names that have been presented as nominees. What happens if you get to conference and one of them decide to pull out from the positions? I'm going to take, for example, a name that I see right now. I give Oscar Mabunyani, for example. He drops out as the deputy president, says, I don't want to contest for that position. Do you still stick it as two? Or can any one of the NEC members decide to step up and say, I would like to challenge for the deputy president role, or whichever one of the roles that one of the candidates drops out from?
No, there's no replacement. If one steps out of the process, we'll be left with those that have been nominated and have accepted nomination.
Right.
So that we don't go and say who wants to replace this one that has now made themselves unavailable. So it's neat.
Yeah.
If you're out on your own, and you can't even say, somebody must stand in for me. So the nomination numbers are not transferable.
Chief, let's talk about, it's a bit of an issue that a lot of people have brought up, women. So I look at the women that are there. Obviously, a lot of the women have been there for a long time, like Ms. Nomvula Mokonyani, Febe Potgieter, of course, two of them running for Deputy Secretary General. As women of the ANC, and we know that they've played such a huge role, none more so than the later, Jessie Duarte was a huge servant to the ANC, may, as we say in Islam, may God grant her Jannatul Firdaus, inshallah. I mean, may God grant her, higher abode in heaven. Uh, should there be a concern within the ANC that there's not enough women representation?
Obviously, it's a concern because the ANC constitution talks about 50% of women being represented. But that 50%, it's applicable to the entire structure of the NEC, which means the entire 86. So the top 6 is not really a structure. From that perspective of the constitutional provision, you wouldn't say you'll have that concern.
Yes.
But obviously, if your top 6 is not gender representative as a progressive movement, you should worry that this should change. And then that talks to the membership issues as to do the members consider these issues of gender when they nominate, or they just nominate who they prefer. But that means that there must be more gender equality awareness within the African National Congress at the branch level, so that you can possibly come out with more representation at the top 6 level. But constitutionally speaking, it's not a big challenge because we are able to make sure that the numbers are 50-50 in the sense that in the nomination of the additional 200, literally speaking, you could take the first male comrades with highest nominations aside, and then another 100 of female comrades with the highest nominations, and together they make 200.
Yeah.
Even in terms of the voting results, you can apply the same equation, and I think it has been applied before. So we are able to manage that aspect.
But I think one of the, obviously, Muslim Diwe Sisulu was obviously somebody who wanted to contest for the ANC president, but as you say, it's down to voting of the branches, and unfortunately, she wasn't able to garner that. Final question before we go to the break, Chief Matsila. For the contestation of president, 2 names. I know you mentioned earlier on a number of them have 3. For the deputy president, SG, DSG, chairperson, and of course the TG. Why is there only 2 for the president? With the electoral committee, and I know obviously now you can't change that because what's done is done. Would it have been, I wouldn't say fairer, but more of a race having 3 members of the NEC contesting for the president?
Yes, you see, that is the outcome of the branch processes.
No, I understand.
And you have to respect it, because you can't then again preempt it and say it should be 3 or 4. It could even be 1.
Yes.
The only requirement is that for you to be a candidate in that particular position, you must at least have received highest nominations by a province. So it means provinces only gave the highest numbers to those 2. And then that's how it worked out. You can't say it's not right. You can't say it's wrong. You only can say that that's how that's the manifestation of the preferences by the branch members of the ANC, that they only have 2. It could be 1.
Yeah.
It could be 1.
Well, as I would say in football sense, you got a 2-horse race that is currently happening at the moment. Okay, after the break, we'll be discussing each of the nominees for each of the positions, especially looking at the contestation or the challenge for the president of the African National Congress at the upcoming elective conference. Do stay tuned to Talking Point on Hilaal TV. Welcome back to Talking Point. We are looking ahead to the ANC elective conference. We are just reviewing, of course, some of the nominees that are going to be filling the top 6 positions for the upcoming elective conference in Nasrec next month. Chief Matsila, let's start off with the Treasurer General position. 3 names. Of course, one of them was the former Executive Mayor of Ekurhuleni. The other is the current national spokesperson for the ANC. When doing these names, so basically they had to put their names in, and then we have, of course, the branch members deciding on them being the final 3, because I'm assuming that there was quite a whole host of people that wanted to be sitting for the Treasurer General. And my question onto that, how important is this position, given that they, of course, deal with a lot of the cash flow that the ANC gets to cover its daily costs?
Yes, no, it's quite a very important position in the ANC, given the dire financial circumstances facing the ANC currently, where even the staff are not paid regularly. So that person will have a lot of work to do to raise the finances and also comply with the issues of disclosing the sources of funding as per the legislation. So this is quite a very, very crucial position, that we get somebody who can really do the job of fundraising and looking at the financial assets of the ANC.
I'm looking at the chairperson position. One person who's running for it again, Mr. Gwere Mantashe, David Masondo, Stanley Matapata. I want to focus on the chairperson because this could be the second time that Mr. Mantashe is running for it. He's, of course, the current chairperson of the ANC. In terms of terms for the chairperson, as per the ANC constitution, is this the last time Mr. Mantashe can run for it, should he be successful in the position?
That's an important position. I don't think the ANC constitution limits the terms through which you can be president or chair.
Yes.
You know, I mean, you have had situations where the chairs of provinces ran for more than 5 terms, 5 terms in
Yes.
in cases. So there is no cap on that. So he can run again for another term after this, if he so wishes, or if he's nominated. In particular, if he's nominated, so one thing to wish to be in a position is another to be nominated.
DSG, I'm looking at it, of course, as a fairly female-dominated one. The last DSG was, of course, filled by a female, as we mentioned, the late Jessie Duarte. There seems to be one where it's fairly female-dominated. Well, given what we saw, obviously, at the last elective conference.
No, you're right. I mean, Comrade Jessie, the late Comrade Jessie.
And she did well in that position.
No, she did very well, but she was also, occupying that position for 2 terms.
Yes.
For 2 terms, it's a very interesting phenomenon, but it's sometimes one of the underrated positions, but it's actually very busy. Yeah. I've seen her working, and I've seen the former Deputy Secretary General. They work very hard. They
I want to talk about, obviously, the work that she did as the DSG, because as you mentioned, there was a lot of work that she had to do. What made her so unique in that position? Because we always, a lot of people speak about her, not just during, obviously, the time of a funeral and, the memorial service that was hosted, but even during her time, she was very firm in her beliefs and, of course, the way she did things. Her uniqueness in this position, I mean, as somebody who obviously interacted with her, what made her so unique to some of the other top 6 positions within the ANC?
Yeah, you see, in that kind of position, you need to have a thick skin.
Yes.
And Comrade Jessie was somebody who had a thick skin. She was a tough character. You couldn't push her around. Even if she was working with a group of male leaders, there was no way that they could push her around. She could stand her ground. She could enforce the constitution and the rules and the principles. And she was somebody who could not be swayed to circumvent the process and procedures of the ANC. And then coupled with that, she was a tough taskmaster. She could work throughout day and night herself. And she was very, very hands-on. And you need somebody who is very hands-on in that position. You need somebody who really can push the paperwork and and she was always there. And she respected structures of the ANC in terms of their roles and assigning that, because, the success of the Electoral Committee in its early formation was due to her support and guidance and understanding of the rules.
Yeah, and I mean, throughout her engagements with the media also, she was firm in the work that she had done. And I think that DSG role, she really, committed herself in making sure that she fulfilled that role to the best of her ability.
That's right.
The Secretary General role, of course, the predecessor to it, of course, the now suspended Ace Magashule. The importance of this role, because this is also like, if the president is not around, this is seen as the face of the party, especially when given press conferences. We've got three: Undumiseni Ntuli, Pumulu Mashuale, and Fikile Mbalula. Fikile Mbalula, of course, served as the former youth league president at the time. The importance of the SG, it cannot be stated how important their role is, because this is basically the face of the party, especially in media engagements and so on.
No, you're right. The Secretary General of the ANC is like the engine of the organization. Without it, the organization would stand still. So this is somebody who acts like the CEO of the ANC,
yes.
because they run all the processes, and including overseeing deployment processes, and all the secretary offices in the provinces and the regions report to the Secretary General. So this is the custodian of the membership data and the functioning of branches. Is the responsibility of the Secretary General. So this is one position that is very key, and that is why they've made it full-time, to be full-time at Lutuli House, including the Deputy Secretary General, which means that the Secretariat is really a very important vehicle through which the organization should function optimally and efficiently. If the Secretariat is weak, the whole organization becomes weak. Even your communication rests there, your staff issues are based there. So that's how important that function is.
Chief Matsila, the Deputy President role, of course, Oscar Mabunyani and Ronald Ramola, just your normal NEC members, of course, who acted as the DG during the time for Mr. Paul Mashatile. His role of being within the top six, there's a sense of familiarity, isn't there, for him challenging as the Deputy President now. It's not an outright, he's not the outright favorite to obviously win it, because, again, it's down to the votes that happens. But the Deputy President role, again, another important one for the top six.
Yeah, it's a very important one, because in the absence of the President, the Deputy President will fulfill the functions of a President. If something was to happen to the President, the Deputy President could steps in. Not even as acting president, but just being deputy president means you take over the roles of the president in his or her absence.
I want to talk about the president's role, Chief Matsila, and I know that the ANC has an integrity committee. You guys have just come out from an NEC meeting that happened this week. And I have to put it to you this way. You've got two contenders that themselves have controversies hanging over them. Again, these are just allegations. These are not found in court. President Cyril Ramaphosa has the Pala scenario hanging over him, and then Dr. Zweli Mkhize has the digital vibes scandal hanging over him also. Heading into the conference as an electoral committee, and along with the work of the integrity committee, is there work being done to supposedly, again, these are based on the allegations, is there work being done for them to be held to account to a certain extent? Because a lot of the ANC members will walk into this conference a little bit uneasy that there are two individuals within the African National Congress who have these scandals over them. So from an electoral committee point of view, how do you deal with this, knowing that you're going into this elective conference with these clouds hanging over their head?
So, you see, as the electoral committee, we work with the rules, not the allegations. And in terms of the rules, there are three categories of comrades who will not be allowed to stand as candidates for the NEC in December. The first category will be those comrades who are charged with or have been convicted of a serious crime. And a serious crime is the one that could result in a prison sentence of more than 6 months. Right. Now, a charge is defined as a charge in the court of law.
With a charge sheet?
Yes. That excludes a case at the police station until such time it advances to go before the court.
Of course.
Then the second category will be Those comrades who have been found guilty of contravening the ANC Code of Conduct and Constitution through a disciplinary committee or had their membership temporarily suspended in the last 10 years. And the third one, it will be those comrades who are facing suspension or on suspension pending the outcome of a criminal case or a disciplinary case within the ANC. And it then also include those comrades who have been recommended by the Integrity Commission to step aside or to vacate official office or to vacate ANC position. Now, the recommendations of the Integrity Commission must have been processed, approved, and implemented by the NEC. Now, the two comrades that you are referring with, which is President Ramaphosa and Dr. Zwelini Mkhize, are not affected by those rules that I've just mentioned.
Why?
Because they have not been charged in the court of law. They are not on suspension. The Integrity Commission has not finalized their recommendations in terms of the NEC. The NEC itself has not taken any decision against them. So they are precluded. It's like the other question that people ask, which is related to this, is to say, why don't you also use the Zondo Commission? Right?
Yes.
The Zondo Commission is not a court judgment.
It's just a commission, yes.
Yeah, it's a commission. So you can't use that because people are not charged. And if you use it, you might be preempting the decision of the law enforcement agencies, because they might decide either way. So that's why we say once you are in court and appearing in court, that's when the step-aside rule applies. And
one final question before we go to the break, Chief Matsila. And this is what I want to ask you. Does Parliament or the independent panel apply? Because there's still an independent panel looking into what happened, into the Pala Pala. And there's pressure coming from the opposition party, which naturally would happen. Does any of that take into effect for the elective conference if it is found that President Cyril Ramaphosa acted unlawfully or went against the contravention of, his oath of office?
You see, a panel will make recommendations, but
yes,
its outcomes are cannot carry the same weight as that of a court.
Yes.
So until there's a court matter pending, we are not able to intervene in terms of our rules. So those will apply to those institutions, and then they can process it and deal with that. But from the ANC's perspective, whatever is before the court has got more weight than any other reports that are institutionalized.
Okay, so what you're saying is that if this is not taken to court, or if President Ramaphosa is not charged for obviously what the allegations are from various parties, money laundering or kidnapping or any of that, or Dr. Zwelini Mkhize, fraud, corruption, any of those things, it doesn't stand with regards to the ANC's list of rules, as you mentioned.
Yes, not only them, but everybody.
Everyone else.
Everybody. So you see, that's what we use. So they are not. It's not customized to suit Dr. Mkhize and the president. It's just how the rules apply across the board and it evenly for all the ANC members.
Just one question quickly. So in that regards, obviously we saw former President Jacob Zuma, of course, he spent a suspended sentence of 6 months. Does that apply to him, given that he could not challenge for any of the positions of the top 6?
Look, I will not be able to respond adequately on that, simply because he has not been nominated.
Okay.
So if he's not nominated, it's not our space to...
But if he had been nominated, obviously those rules come into...
Yes, he will then be vetted. And I will not even answer you before we do the vetting.
Yes, no, 100%. Or the vetting is still to come.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, after the break, we'll be wrapping up the conversation. We're going to be discussing the importance of this elective conference that is coming up at Nasrec. Do stay tuned to Talking Point on Hilaal TV. Welcome back to Talking Point. We're looking ahead to the ANC elective conference, but also reviewing the top 6 positions for each of them and the nominees that are going to be there. Chief Matsila, as a member of the ANC, and as I ask you, I know the last few, obviously, provincial conferences, the ANC has taken a hit on a number of provinces in a number of metros. How important is this conference for the ANC? I know each of the presidential candidates are launching their own sort of campaigns. But for the ANC, with its reputation, which has taken quite a knock, how important is this elective conference to bring back the confidence to many of the voters? Because we cannot shy away from the work that the ANC has done, obviously, as a liberation movement, but also its work during democracy. How important is this elective conference for the African National Congress?
No, it is an all-important conference. I think the most important conference, because if the ANC does not come out with a message that it has elected leaders that are accountable, that are transparent, and that are ethical, it will then further have reduced majority, and it could then be forced to be in a coalition government, which is something that we are not ready for. So it's a very, very important conference. This is why the questions around the integrity of the leaders is so important to explain the instruments that we use to ensure that they are held accountable. And all the leaders so far have been accountable. You look at Dr. Mkhize stepped aside from a government position voluntarily. The president has taken the NEC into confidence around that, around his para issues, and of course, he has subjected himself to other processes, 3 processes altogether, where there will be outcomes. So I think that kind of approach by the leadership is very exemplary to say that they are not above the law, and that they should be treated the same as ordinary citizens, which is very good in terms of our posture. The main issue that will make or break the ANC, it's the slate of factions. And in terms of our rules, we have disallowed factions. That's why these numbers are not factional in terms of how they've come out. Then you will find that for a slate, everyone gets the same amount of nominations. Here you can see branches are nominating, which means the branches are beginning to see the integrity of the system, which then translates into the integrity of the ANC itself. As to the ANC that takes membership seriously, which means you take communities seriously, that they elect you, and therefore you can be accountable to them.
One final question to wrap up the show, Chief Matsila. In the modern age of social media, which reaches to the far ends everywhere, I think it's both you and I would agree that voters are not ignorant. They understand the situation right here. For a party that has been 28 years in power and heading into 2024, which will be the 30th, should, of course, whatever happens in the elections. You mentioned the word make or break. This is make or break for the ANC, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It is make or break. It is make or break if there are no changes in terms of how we account to people, and if the service delivery issues are not handled properly, the issues of ESCOM, power supply, the water issues, the violence that is escalating, and the crime that is escalating, the gender-based violence and all those kinds of issues, if they're not really, curtailed, we will have serious problems in terms of people having trust on us. So it means that our manifesto in 2024 must start to demonstrate how we have learned from the past mistakes, and how we're going to correct our work, especially with respect to vulnerable communities, how we're going to have programs that are relevant and fit for purpose.
Chief Matsila, I wish you all the best. I know it's going to be a very busy time leading up to, obviously, the elective conference and the work that you are doing during that. So we wish you all the best with regards to that, and whatever the outcomes is going to be, as South Africans. And of course, I'm talking about the ANC members also. that the elections go smooth, and that whoever is nominated with integrity and, of course, the right way.
Thank you very much for this opportunity.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. That is Chief Matsila. He is the ANC Electoral Committee Secretary. Well, 3 weeks to go before that all-important elective conference takes place in Nasrec. So we wait to see what the outcome is going to be, and a massive one for the ANC that's going to be coming up. As Chief Matsila said, this could potentially be make or break for the oldest liberation movement on this continent. Well, from myself, Faraz Patel, and the rest of the team here on Talking Point on Hilaal TV, we say Jazakallah for joining us, and we'll see you same time, same place next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.